On the phone, Tim Karr, Senior Director of Strategy for freepress.net. Tim, welcome back to the program.
Hey, Sam, how are you?
I'm doing well. I am really. I was gonna suggest that maybe we just talk in slow motion today to push the point. But it is Internet Slowdown Day. What does that mean? What's going on?
Well, Internet Slowdown is a day of action where hundreds of websites, tech companies, advocacy organizations have joined together to display on their websites what a lot of people call the spinning circle of death, the slow-loading icon that so many people are familiar with when they have that frustrating experience of trying to load a video or a music file on the internet. And we put that on all of our websites, and it allows people to click through to an action where they can ask the Federal Communications Commission to protect real net neutrality. So there are a lot of organizations across the web, companies like Tumblr, Twitter, and Netflix, and are taking part, and we're hoping to really generate a lot of letters to the FCC and also phone calls to Congress today.
All right. Now, we've talked about net neutrality quite a bit on this program. Where are we in the, following this court case? I guess it was maybe back in January, where I know a lot of folks like yourself had been anticipating that court case and anticipating more or less the outcome, which was that the scheme that the FCC tried to create to regulate the ability of internet providers to basically choose one service over another in terms of creating a multiple-tiered internet was going to fail because they refused ultimately to go back to reclassify. Tell us where we are in terms of that reclassification, and just remind people what that means.
Sure. So the Federal Communications Commission has consistently got net neutrality wrong, what this FCC, the FCC under President Obama, has been trying to do is fulfill the President's pledge to support strong net neutrality protections. However, the FCC, because it is very beholden to powerful phone and cable industry lobbyists, a lot of FCC employees go on to work for the phone and cable lobby, hasn't
Well, to be
done
fair,
it right.
Let me just say, to be fair, Tom Wheeler, the chair of the FCC, already worked for that industry, right?
Yeah, Tom Wheeler was the chief lobbyist for the National Cable and Telecommunications Association, the top lobby group, before he came to the FCC. So the revolving door does spin in both directions. But what they have consistently gotten this wrong, and what they haven't done is reverse the decision that was made in 2002, 2003 by a Bush-era FCC chairman, Michael Powell, who just so happens today to have taken Tom Wheeler's job as the top lobbyist for the National Cable and Telecommunications Association. But when Powell was the chairman, he reclassified internet service providers under what's called Title I of the Telecommunications Act. He took them out of a common carrier designation of Title II, and that created this massive legal mess because in order for the FCC to truly protect net neutrality, to stop internet service providers from discriminating or blocking or slowing your access to websites, they need Title II authority in order to do that. So what we've been asking, and what we're asking today through this mass day of action, is to give the new FCC chairman, Tom Wheeler, the backing, the political support that he needs to do the right thing, fix that problem from the Bush era, and restore common carrier status to internet service providers so that they can no longer block or prevent our access to websites or services that we may want to use.
Now, when we talk about common carrier status, and we talk about basically reclassifying the internet as falling under Title II. We're basically saying this is a telecommunications utility like the phone.
Well, it's not really. If you reclassify, if you make a company like Comcast behave as a common carrier, you're not automatically transforming that into a utility. There are plenty of private enterprises that are common carriers. In fact, Disney roller coasters were ruled common carriers. We are talking right now via a privately controlled network that is a common carrier. So the issue of whether or not internet should be like a public utility is a slightly different discussion. What we're trying to do is provide a common carrier rule for internet service providers, and it really is the only way that you can protect free speech over private networks. And there's a long history of common carriage rules that go all the way back to the telegraph that were intended to do just that.
So let me ask you this: when they reclassified, and when we talk about the FCC has gotten it wrong, or they don't have the political backing to make this move, I mean, is this to stay within the sort of like the tech parlance? When the internet was reclassified, was it a feature or a bug that made it so hard to impose net neutrality?
Well, actually, net neutrality was built into the DNA of the internet at its inception. So, I mean, the internet itself is a network that was built along this engineering principle called the end-to-end principle, which basically said that all of the choice exists at the edges of the network and not in the middle. And that was an engineering principle that was figured out by academics and Defense Department engineers way back in the 60s when we were crafting the internet. Little did they know was that idea was very politically relevant, because when you apply it to media networks, what an end-to-end principle means is that there are no gatekeepers, that we as internet users get to decide who we connect with, what services we use, what news sites we want to go to. We might want to listen to your radio program rather than having to listen to or watch CNN.com or something else. It gives us the power to choose. And so that end-to-end principle removed the gatekeeper. So it's part of the way the internet has always worked, but unfortunately the phone and cable lobby has wanted to change that, because they're not happy with just selling you an internet connection. You may pay 40, 50, 60, 70, I don't know how much you might pay for your internet connection. It varies from place to place. And the deal that they strike with you is that, we're going to connect you to the internet, and then we're going to get out of your way. Well, now they want to get back into their way, and in order to do that, they need to re-engineer the internet, kill this principle of net neutrality, so that they can begin to discriminate in favor of websites and services that pay them more.
That pay them more, that they may in fact own in many instances, right? I mean, this is a sort of the classic sin-fin type of situation. But let me get back to my question. What my question was that when Powell reclassified it, and when Tom Wheeler shows some measure of reluctance to do so, is it because they're just not intelligent enough to realize what could happen, or is it because, in fact, that they don't like this idea of end-to-end, this end-to-end structure, and that their buddies in the industry can make more money if it doesn't exist?
It's because they're political animals, and they live inside a bubble, which is Washington, D.C., where the phone and cable lobby is thought to hold, all power over the political process. And they have been told in no uncertain terms by the phone and cable lobby that to reclassify internet service providers as common carriers is, quote, the nuclear option, unquote. And they are so fearful of upsetting that lobby that they're willing to ignore the overwhelming public support for net neutrality. Now, the FCC has opened its docket for comments for several months now. They opened it in May. And in that time, there have been 1.4 million comments. There will be a lot more going in today because of the internet slowdown. That is the most comments that they have received on any rulemaking in their history. And the Sunlight Foundation, which you're probably familiar with, a transparency organization, went in and looked at all of those comments, and they found that 99% said they supported strong net neutrality rules. Now, if you ever want an indication of public support for an issue, having 99% in favor is a pretty good indication, and hopefully it should put wind in your sails if you are someone like Chairman Tom Wheeler, who wants to actually do that to protect net neutrality by reclassifying. Unfortunately, they are these political creatures who live inside Washington, and they think that the decisions that are made by phone and cable lobbyists are far more important than what millions of Americans are demanding via their own open docket.
So we're talking about, at this point, nearly, I don't know, about 1 out of every 200 breathing Americans, regardless of age, has commented on this. That's pretty stunning. I mean, that's a stunning amount of feedback.
Well, in fact, there have been more, because that's just the comments that have occurred at the FCC. We've also, Free Press works with a lot of other organizations on this issue, including Move On, including Credo, all of whom have fairly large memberships, and we've been engaging them in a whole number of ways this year. We've put calls into Congress, letters to the White House. So we did a count. We tallied up our respective lists and counted the number of actions that have occurred in 2014, and that number exceeds 4 million.
Wow.
So in fairness, some of these lists, the membership overlaps. So that doesn't really mean 4 million individuals, but it does mean 4 million individual actions were taken. So this is an issue that even we've admitted is kind of techie. It gets really wonky. It's hard to understand. Net neutrality is kind of a strange term, but for some reason it now seems to be resonating across a fairly significant portion of the American population.
So just lastly, let's talk about the businesses involved. I saw that the CEO of Etsy was basically saying our business really could fold in the absence of reclassification. Ultimately, you mentioned Netflix. Put into context Netflix participation in this based upon the fact that they earlier this year had made a deal. I think it was with Verizon or Comcast. Did what they do in terms of paying for a I don't know if it can be characterized as a higher level of service, but they made some deal which some people felt was a threat to net neutrality. Tell us about that.
Yeah, I mean, a company like Netflix is facing an existential crisis, right? If internet service providers have the right to degrade their service, then they lose their business. And a company like Comcast, which is also in the business of providing streaming video and its own cable television business, has the incentive to undermine Netflix. So they are facing an existential crisis, and I think they've signed these deals really with a gun to their head. But then their CEO has since come out and said, this was really horrible. We shouldn't have to do this. We're strongly in support of net neutrality. Now, Netflix is just one company that's involved, but this list includes Tumblr and Twitter, Kickstarter, a lot of companies. Reddit is very involved, that have become supporters of this day of action, the internet slowdown, have a business model that's built on this idea of the open internet. So it's in their interests as companies to see that the open internet thrives. And we're happy that interest aligns with the interests of a lot of internet users out there who also want to be able to go to these websites and websites that might compete with them without our ISP telling us whether that's okay or not.
All right, so where should people go to get more information and to be able to, I know you have basically a gateway that provides, that sends people to where to comment for the FCC.
Yeah, and if you're on any of your favorite websites today and you see that spinning icon, you click through, and that'll take you to battleforthenet.com, which is the coalition website. The coalition that's organizing this is Free Press, Demand Progress, Fight for the Future, and Engine Advocacy. So those four groups have been organizing the companies and other advocacy groups. So you go to battleforthenet.com. You can take action and call your members of Congress and contact the FCC. We also have a lot of resources on this at freepress.net.
And so, and then what happens next? These comments go in. When does the comment period close? And then when do we anticipate the next move by the FCC?
Well, the FCC's comment period closes on September 15th, so we have a few days left before that closes. The FCC is then supposed to look at all of the comments that come in and make a decision. And we hope that they actually read these comments and that they listen to the American public and they make the right decision. Now, that decision could come down by the end of this year or early next year.
All right, there we have it. Tim Karr, Senior Director of Strategy from freepress.net. It is battleforthenet.com. We, of course, linked to it at majority.fm.
Battleforthenet.com will get you there. So
all right, great.
That works.
All right, Tim Karr, thanks so much for your time today.
My pleasure.
Obviously, very important to this program because, somebody like probably Marin would Bigfoot us and take up all the extra bandwidth. He'd be able to buy the extra bandwidth for streaming and whatnot. But, ultimately, look, what is happening in our media is fairly obvious. Things are becoming more and more niche. Soon, there'll be more and more, you have outfits like HuffPost Live and Washington Post TV. I actually think there is something like that. Bloomberg TV, on and on and on. And we're all going to be in competition. And, of course, they have a huge advantage because they have the resources to market themselves better than we do. And the competency in the office sometimes to market themselves better than we do. But what they will not be able to do if we have genuine net neutrality is to provide a better quality stream or a more reliable stream than we can. And that's really what this fight is about. So if you have yet to make a comment to the FCC, do so now.